Hi everyone, Sal Khan here. Welcome to the Daily Homeroom. For those of y'all who don't know what this is, you're just showing up off of Facebook or YouTube. This is something that we started once we started seeing mass school closures, and it's really a way for all of us to stay connected. Obviously, Khan Academy, as a not-for-profit with a mission of providing free world-class education for anyone, anywhere, over the last many years, we've been building resources that we've saw students use both outside of school and inside of school with teachers. And we could have never foreseen this crisis, but when it started happening, we realized, given our mission, it's our duty to step up in any way possible to support you, the student, the teacher, and the parent. And so we've been putting out webinars to help parents and teachers get set up. We've been issuing daily schedules. We just issued some learning plans last week. And we also thought it would be fun to have something like this, just a way to stay connected in times of social distancing and talk about interesting subjects. It might be related to Khan Academy, it might be education generally, it might be just how do we make, how do we navigate this crisis that we're going through. I will give my the plug that I give every day, remind everyone that we are supported through philanthropic donations from folks like yourself. So if you're in a position to, please think about donating. I want to give a special shout out to several corporations who've stepped up in the last few weeks. Bank of America stepped up that first weekend when it was clear that we were going to have the school closings. Google.org, AT&T, Novartis. If any of you represent corporations, please reach out to us. We were running a deficit even before this crisis, and our costs have gone up since then. And there's all sorts of things we want to do and accelerate forward, but we're only going to be able to do it if we're able to get more support. And thank you for the many thousands of people who've donated over the last few weeks. It all makes a difference and allows us to accelerate our work. So the focus of today, I have a very fun guest who's a close friend of mine and also does very important work in the world. We have Jim Steyer from Common Sense Media. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Sal. Great to be here.
And
Great to be here. By the way, should give money to Khan Academy. It is a fabulous organization, and the Steyers are donors. We're a not-for-profit, but there's nobody better than Sal on Khan Academy. He's right about that.
I did not tell Jim to say that, but that's why we are
He
good
didn't.
friends. He knows. You know, you know. First of all, in this conversation, I'm going to ask Jim a few questions about Common Sense Media generally, and maybe some of the things we're doing together and how we're navigating the crisis. But if anyone has questions, feel free to go on YouTube and Facebook, and our team members will surface questions if you have questions for Jim about his work at Common Sense Media, or any questions for me as well. But Jim, maybe a good place to start. Tell folks what Common Sense Media is and why you started it.
Okay, so we are a nonprofit organization and really the leading kids media and advocacy organization in the U.S. I started it because I'm a former school teacher and a Stanford prof who cares a ton about really educating families and kids in general, but also about the impact of media and technology on their lives. I started it 15 years ago. We do three things. We rate, educate, and advocate. So for folks out there in the audience who know us, we rate every movie, TV, video game, website, book, music, you name it. Common Sense rates it and gives you information so parents can make better choices for their kids. The educate part of our work is we created the field of digital citizenship, digital literacy. So we have a curriculum in most of the schools in the United States about the safe, ethical, responsible use of media and technology at home and in the classroom. And then finally, we're a leading child advocacy group that advocates for everything like everybody having Wi-Fi and broadband, every student in America having access to Khan Academy and these kind of resources, and also on issues like education and healthcare and all the issues that matter to kids and families here in the U.S. So a big nonprofit just like Khan Academy and a huge fan of Khan Academy and Sal.
You know, we're fans of you and all of the work y'all do as well. And so to make it tangible for a lot of folks, I use Common Sense Media with my own family when I'm just trying to find good stuff for them. We're doing movie nights once a week now with all of the social distancing, and we turn to Common Sense Media a lot for that. What are some of the things? And I know we have some stuff going on together as well. But what were y'all focused on before this crisis hit, and how has that evolved to some degree since then?
Okay, great question, Sal. So basically, before the crisis hit, we had this big consumer platform with 100 million people on it trying to figure out what movies to watch with their kids on movie night or what video games were appropriate for a 12-year-old, et cetera. And we were in most of the schools in the US basically working with teachers and educators saying, here's how to use the internet, here's how to use cell phones and social media in a really responsible way. And when this crisis hit, one of the first things we thought was, wow, we need to work with Khan Academy. But we also thought, wouldn't it be great to create one central hub where schools could go and where families could go to find at one click of a button the best educational resources to deal with the COVID-19 crisis. So, along with the support of folks like Khan Academy, we created wideopenschool.org, which is this new platform. Our colleagues at Amplify helped build the platform. And then honestly, we link to the best content out there. Khan Academy, National Geographic, Sesame Street, etc. And the idea was make it really easy for parents and students who are at home and who are doing distance learning, and also for schools around the United States to have one central place where they could get the content they wanted and actually to do homeschooling. And as you mentioned, Sal, having a daily schedule there is really, really important because everybody's at home right now and trying to do learning from home. And whether they're on Khan Academy or Wide Open School, we're just trying to help everybody learn from home. And we think this is going to be changing the nature of education long term, just like Khan Academy changed the nature of education when Sal founded Khan Academy.
Well, what's your sense? A lot of questions. I'm having a lot of conversations these days, obviously about the whole virus generally. But
Right.
how do you think this is going to play out over the next several weeks or months, especially in relation to school and kids, maybe generally speaking?
I'll tell you, I actually think that ultimately we're going to listen. We're here in California, Sal, so we've had a governor really step forward and mayors and stuff. I think we're going to be, sad to say, I think we're going to be learning from home for the rest of the school year for sure. And I think that even for the rest of 2020, much of learning is going to be online, much more than normal. And therefore, everybody out there is going to need to be able to access the internet, is going to be able to access resources like Khan Academy. And so I think this is going to last longer than normal. And I think it's really important for all of us. I have 4 children. Sal, I know you're a doting dad too. I think we have to explain to our kids that we're going to be at home. It's good family time, but we're going to need to figure out how to do school, also how to take breaks and get exercise and not sit in front of a screen all day long. So I think this is going to last longer than we think. I think, for example, it's going to probably affect summers, and a lot of us are going to probably do some more at home than we were planning on. I know my kids who are a little older than your kids, Sal, they are, some of them, they're in college and grad school, and they're taking their classes at home, and their summer jobs have changed. So sad to say, I think we're going to have to figure out how to work with this for months. I don't think it's just going to be weeks. I think it'll be a few months, to be honest, because of the virus.
Yeah, and we're getting some comments off of
What do you?
YouTube. Tazeta Roro says, I have been using this with my kids. I think they're referring to either Common Sense or Wide Open School. And I've been using this with
No.
my kids this week, and it helps me feel less guilty about screen time. Actually, that's an interesting issue. How do
Well,
you think about coping with screen time guilt? I'm happy to give my own views on that, although I'm conflicted.
well,
What are your
I
thoughts
want to
about
hear you.
that as a parent and an expert?
So I'd love to hear what you think too, Sal, as a parent and an expert. So definitely you're going to have more screen time right now. There's just no question, because literally my kids are going to school online right now. So they're going to be in front of a screen more than they are. And as Common Sense, sort of, we're the leading spokespeople on this issue about, balance and moderation when it comes to screen time. And by the way, it's a really important message. But I think that we have to understand these are unique circumstances. So I do think that we should let up on some of the hard and fast rules. We want our kids going to school, doing online learning. We want them using Khan Academy resources. But I think you also, as a parent, for example, really want to have balance in your kids' lives. And you don't want to plunk them in front of a screen for 8 hours in a row. That's my take. And that's what we're trying to do with the Steyer children. How about you, Sal? What do you think?
I feel very similar. My answer even before this crisis was it's not so much measuring what is happening on the screen, but measuring what's happening in the student's whole life. And so
Right.
if a student is getting time where they're socializing, spending time with their family, they're running outside, they have time for creativity, etc., then I'm less worried about that screen time, especially if that screen time is constructive screen time. I think most of us, if we saw our middle school student spend 3 hours composing a poem, we would view that as negative screen time. Or if we saw them, I'm a big fan of reading a book for real, but I know a lot of people like reading on a Kindle. That's not the end of the world type of screen time. If someone wants to, I remember when I was a kid, if I got really excited about I actually didn't have a computer at home growing up, but at the local university, I somehow convinced a professor to give me access to the computers. But, there were times where I spent 12 hours straight, 20 hours straight, just creating
Yeah.
something, coding something. And that was, I mean, it was probably a little unhealthy. But I probably had more caffeine than I should have, but it was actually constructive screen time. And obviously, if you're learning, and so yeah, I'm trying to balance it myself, and especially in this time of social distancing and everyone is together. Yesterday, me and the family, we were all on the couch together. We had the popcorn going. We watched 2 episodes of Will Smith's documentary that's on Disney Plus around One Strange Rock. That was great. I thought that was great. Screen time and great family time. We learned a ton about aliens and astronauts and how life happened to exist on Earth. So I think that kind of thing, when you're with your family, we're having a good conversation around it. It was 2 hours of screen time of TV watching, but I felt like it was a lot of bonding too. So yeah, there's a balance.
I agree with you. I mean, I actually think that's what I would say. I think it's quantity and quality. And you're absolutely right. And the other thing about this COVID-19 epidemic is it forces more family time, which is a really good thing. I mean, your kids are a little younger than ours. I know, Sal. And so for me, I have kids who are teenagers and college age and a little older, right? And it's great because you actually are spending more time as a family. You're having family dinners. But I do think that it's when you talk about screen time, you should think about quality in terms of do good stuff, like just like you described, family screen time, but educational stuff. If you're going to read a book online, that's great. Not too much just junk, if you will. It's sort of like food, and you're thinking about your nutritional diet. You don't want to have your kid only have junk food. But it's also taking breaks. You mentioned exercising, getting outside as much as possible, getting a break, sort of having a balance there. That's why the daily schedule that we were talking about is important. And it's balance, moderation, but we're going to be in front of screens more often. So let's make it constructive quality screen time. Why not?
Yeah. And there's a couple of questions we have for Amy Liang on YouTube is asking, what inspired you to make the website, Jim Steyer? Well, maybe I'll broaden the question a little bit. As you pointed, you used to be a Stanford professor, you're a lawyer by training.
Right.
What did you see 15 years ago where you said, hey, there's something wrong with society, we need a not-for-profit like Common Sense Media?
I'll tell you the honest answer. So my life work, I've been a Stanford professor, and now I'm dating myself, but for 30 years. And I was a civil rights lawyer first, so Amy's correct. And what happened was I wanted to create the most important child advocacy group in the United States. I'm really an advocate. My life work is as an educator, teacher, and as an advocate for children. That's really what I do. And when I started Common Sense, we created the web platform, the platform, and all the ratings and reviews and all that stuff, basically to get the public to care about children. And also, we realized at that time, this is 15 years ago, that movies and TV shows and music were having a huge impact on kids' lives and families' lives. Remember, there was no iPhone, no Facebook, no Google, no Snapchat, nothing. And in the day when we started Common Sense, it was basically movies and TV and maybe some music and video games. But the real thing for me was to build a platform that everybody could join if they wanted to care about children generally, and to create this membership-based sort of advocacy group for children, particularly for disadvantaged children who don't have a voice. And lo and behold, 15 years later, oh my gosh, who knew that we would have 100 million plus users for our consumer reports guide? And the truth is, I didn't realize the media technology piece would be so big. And who could have known that Steve Jobs would bring out the iPhone, or that Mark Zuckerberg would invent Facebook, or that you'd have YouTube and Snapchat and all the other things that are so key in our kids' life. But the truth is, when it happened, Common Sense was there, and we pivoted. And so I remember when you started Khan Academy, and I remember those conversations we had, and I was so happy that you decided to make Khan Academy a not-for-profit, because you could have built a successful for-profit business, but your heart was so much I never forget that. Your heart was so much in the right place of doing this as a not-for-profit and making it the school for everybody in the world. And you should be very proud of that, my friend. I'm serious. But that's why we love working with you guys. But I could have never predicted 15 years ago that Common Sense would have gotten this big. But the same mission is about kids, basically. It's how do you change the world for kids? How do you improve the world for kids, particularly the ones who need it the most? That's my biggest concern, by the way, during the COVID-19 crisis, is how do we take care of the kids who are not living, who are in a 2-room home with 5 people, and whose school isn't even doing learning yet because they don't even have a system set up. So I think for those of us who are so fortunate, I think it's really important to remember that there's like tens of millions of kids out there who have very few resources, and we want to care about them and give them the same opportunities that Sal Khan's kids and Jim Steyer's kids have. But that's what motivates me. That's why I started Common Sense. And like you, who knew Khan Academy would turn it? You were just making videos for your nieces and nephews. Look what happened. Sort of the same thing with Common Sense.
No, you never know. And there's a question here from Facebook, Scott Yang, who's been consistently asking good questions. I mean, I'm going to broaden his question. His question is, are video games fine? But I'm going to broaden it, which is obviously Common Sense. You guys are rating what is good or what's appropriate for different ages. And I think all of us have a sense, you see a video game where you're shooting people up, like, hey, that might not be right. I mean, frankly, even for me, myself, if I watch a movie or a video game that's really gruesome, I'm like, when I was a teenager, for some reason, I didn't mind it. But now when I look at it, I don't know. I'm like, oh, that's troubling. I'm not sure if I can sleep tonight. What do we, and then there's things like social media and things that aren't gruesome, but have other dynamics.
Yeah.
There's the stuff we know intuitively, but what evidence do we have that it is maybe some of this stuff could cause harm?
Well, it's really a good question. So video games have been a big issue for Common Sense right from day one, right? So we were the first people who started rating them and really calling out the violence in certain of the old video games and explaining to parents and educators that, too much violence is really bad for kids, that there's copycat violence and also you can become inured to violence. So I would say it's really interesting. Because we realized how incredibly popular video games are, and they remain to be that day. I have a 16-year-old son who, if we allowed him to, would play video games for 18 hours a day, and not all of them would be the video games that I might recommend. And so I think a couple of things. We worked very closely with the video game industry to tell them, you have to limit the violence. Also, there used to be racially stereotypical stuff and a lot of sexist stuff. There was a lot of content in video games that was certainly inappropriate for an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old. And then there was the issue of too much time in front of a screen. So we have done a lot of advocacy around the issue of video games. We've done a lot to educate parents and teachers about how much time kids how much time kids are spending playing video games, and also how to find the good ones. Because as you know, Sal, there are a ton of great games out there, and there are different kinds of learning. Some of the most creative educational products are actually game-based products that are really educational. So again, I think it's both quality of the game and the amount. So I wouldn't let Jesse, our son, play 10 hours of video games, even though he probably would like to. And you're right, teenagers, particularly boys, are the ones who would spend all day in front of a video game machine if we let them. But it's a great question. And I think it's one of the reasons why commonsense.org is such a good resource, because you can go there and check out anything and say, hey, is this okay for my 8-year-old or my 15-year-old? And it's balance, it's moderation, but video games can also be awesome. And I like to play them too, but I'm not nearly as talented as my son is.
And what about social media? I hear, at least anecdotally, I've talked to university presidents. They're talking about how anxiety has gotten through the roof, and some people have pointed it to this as a generation that kind of grew up on social media. What do y'all know about that?
Well, that's a really big issue. So first of all, this is the first real generation of digital natives who are growing up on social media platforms. And so I think we try to take a fairly balanced approach. We have been critical of some of the big social media players for allowing inappropriate content on their platform, whether it's cyberbullying or, the one thing about some of the platforms, if you think about, say, Instagram and Snapchat, which are where a lot of kids are today, there's a constant comparison of yourself. I wrote a book back in 2012 called Talking Back to Facebook, where I talked about the fact, and as the father of 2 daughters, that millions of girls out there, and boys too, Photoshop their images on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, meaning they're wanting to show an ideal personality or an ideal image, which is just unrealistic. So we've tried to work closely with the big platforms and tried to get them to clean up some of the stuff that's on there and be aware of how many hundreds of millions of kids are on those platforms. But the truth is this, I know as a father of teenagers, kids are on those platforms. The question is, how do you both limit the amount of time and also use those platforms for the good stuff? And I think this is as a parent, you really have to talk with your kids about social media, and teachers do too. Much of the curriculum that we have in schools around the United States and globally is about how do you deal with social media? How do you use it responsibly? And how do you not engage in bullying or all the other kinds of things that can negative on a social media platform? And we're very frank with the guys who run the big platforms too about trying to clean up those platforms and make them kid-friendly and appropriate too. So I think that's a big part of the common sense mission.
Have you found that folks have been receptive to your feedback?
It depends. I honestly, Sal, I really will say this. It depends on the platform and the company. I think a lot of it has to do with who the people are who lead the organization. Because it's the same thing in a way. At the end of the day, there are a ton of great people who work at Khan Academy, but you set the tone and the culture. You do. And there's a degree to which I do that at Common Sense. So I think when it comes to that, it really depends platform by, I think that's really true in life, that you have to show leadership. Just like as a parent and you and your spouse have to set the family role models and you have to set good examples for your kids, including about media and technology use. But I think that some of the platforms have been more responsive than others. The other thing is, it's funny because as a Stanford professor, I've had so many thousands of students who went into the technology industry. I think that people who work in the tech industry have to realize the incredible impact of the platforms they've built on the lives of everybody out there, and they have to be responsible for the content of those platforms and also some of the design of those platforms, so that you don't have people sitting there watching 9 hours in a row of their favorite show. So I think it's really about, I think there's a big role for common sense and folks like you, Sal, and all of us, and parents and kids out there, to ask the platforms to be responsible. And I think one of the things about this crisis is a lot of them have really stepped up to the plate. And if you look at the partners with Wide Open School, it hasn't just been you guys, but Google and Zoom have been really good, and Apple, and that's been great because they have such huge reach, and they owe it. I really feel they have a responsibility to the public to do right by the public. And I think that in a number of cases, they're really stepping up and should be. And they're going to need to do that long term as education becomes increasingly online and learn at home, distance learning kind of stuff.
Yeah, and in fairness to them, these are incredibly hard issues. And obviously we are right now streaming on YouTube and Facebook, so we're able to leverage social media for hopefully not evil. And even, some of the things that are not optimal about it, there are all these really interesting edge cases around free speech, or how do you control things, or if you have some machine learning algorithm that's optimizing for views, how do you control that? So I definitely understand where some of their difficulties lie, but it's a real thing. When we talk to university people running universities and high schools right now, the amount of anxiety and depression from kids, to your point, comparing themselves to others or getting bullied or bullying others seems a little bit out of control. Well, I don't want to end on that note. Well, Jim, why don't you tell what are your hopes? What are your hopes for Common Sense Media? What are your hopes for what might happen in the coming months ahead or coming years ahead? Right before we got on, we were talking a little bit about whether we could get to a world of universal at-home internet access. What are let's end on a high note, if you're still there. Well, maybe Jim has disappeared. So anyway, I'll thank Jim for joining. I thought that was really valuable, and we were able to get 90% of what we were hoping to get from Jim. They do really great work at Common Sense, and I encourage any of y'all with more questions. We have a little bit more time. I'm always happy to answer these questions. I think there's actually a lot of questions. You see, someone asked, this was Nikhil Govender asked for both myself and Jim, how has social media had a positive and negative effect on your life? I would say social media for me personally has for the most part been a positive effect on my life. Obviously, the early days of Khan Academy, people think Khan Academy started with videos. We actually started with this little software platform that I was running for my cousins, and I made videos to supplement that software. But obviously, if you consider YouTube to be a social media platform, having a place where I could publish and people discover allowed people to discover Khan Academy, allowed some of the first funders to realize that this was an effort worth doing. So I think Khan Academy's benefit from that. We obviously still leverage social media a lot. We're doing it right now. But I would also say that I'm fortunate, and I do consider myself fortunate that I didn't in the same way grow up with social media. I could imagine the things that Jim is talking about when you're 12, 13 years old, 14-year-old, or you're a 10-year-old with a fake account pretending you're 13 years old. That it can put a lot of pressure on you to try to be something you're not. Or when your frontal lobe isn't fully developed, you might be putting things out there into the world that later you might be not so proud of. And it's good. It's good that for a lot of us, we were lucky enough that it wasn't documented on social media, and I think that can also lead to some stresses. Generally in my own personal life, I've gotten a lot of people saying, "Hey Sal, you have to get on Twitter more. You got to post on Instagram more." And I think like the 17 or 18-year-old Sal or the 20-year-old Sal actually would have loved doing that. Would have said, "Look at this really deep thing I have to say." But I think these days I feel a little bit maybe overexposed. I'm like, well, I know people really don't need that little weird thing that I'm thinking about right now. But overall, I think social media can be a very positive thing. But you just have to be careful. Jim, people were asking how has social media
You're a
affected you
wise man.
personally?
You're a very wise
Better or
man.
better? What about yourself? Has social media been a positive or negative, or and how for you, Jim?
It's interesting. I think what you just said is so intelligent. I think it's been overall a positive. It's interesting because as a parent, there have been a lot of times when I was concerned about, particularly my kids when they were younger, about some of the bullying, but also the comparison. I mentioned the body image issue. Um, Me, I'm not a big user of social media myself, but I think it's all about how you use it. It's like life. If you use it wisely and in balance and moderation, use it for the good things, social media can be incredible. If you use it for negative things, to be hurtful to other people or to worry about, to play out your identity, it can be challenging. It's an ongoing effort for me as a parent, but I'm, I think we have a huge role, and you have a huge role in educating our own kids about it first and foremost. Setting a good role. I always say that to parents. The number one thing you do is try to be a good role model, right? You have to model that for your kids. If you're bullying other people online or on a social media platform or texting nasty things to people, even as an adult, because adults do that, that's not good. But this is the world we live in. I'm glad I didn't grow up with it too, though, Sal. I thought that was a really good thing. I'm glad I grew up in an era where, you just didn't have it. But now I think it's all about using it and using common sense.
Yeah, no, it's a good way to end. And I will add, I've had moments, a lot of what has driven my life is my attempts to help my cousins. And there's been a couple of moments over the last few years where I literally would call up a cousin and I was like, "Do you realize that I and the whole world can see that picture that someone took of you in that situation? Take it down. Future
Yeah.
employers will see it. This is not going to be good for you." And so I think a lot of folks don't realize that someone takes out their phone, takes a picture of you and doing something silly, and it's out there, and it's actually really hard to get it out. Your employers will see it. Your future in-laws will see it. You have to be,
Correct.
yeah, you have to be very careful. And I think a lot of young people don't realize that it's not just the here and now. There's long-term implications. So yeah, be very, very, very careful of all of these things. So
Yeah.
Jim, no better person than yourself to talk about social media and media generally. Thanks for joining, and thanks for your partnership on all of what we're trying to do to support families.
So honestly, it's my honor to be here. I am such a huge fan of Khan Academy and of yours personally. But I would say the same thing. Good luck as a dad, just like good luck to me as a dad during these crazy times. But we are huge fans. And I'm going to end by saying what I said at the beginning. You guys should all support Khan Academy. It is like this incredible institution, not for profit, started by one of the best people I've ever known. So bless you. It was an honor to be here, Sal. I will look forward to working with you for many years to come.
Great. Thanks, Jim. And stay safe. Take care of the family.
You
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. It was a fun conversation, and please continue to join us for. I'll see you on Monday with our next daily live stream.